Okay. It might do the smart AI recording. I think that allows it to transcribe it.
Uh, eh, until what time will this event be? Eh,
I I don't know. I think this might go for about 40 to 45 minutes.
okay.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. And let's just give it about 2 more minutes. Good to see so many friends on the Zoom. And we'll just wait 1 more minute, see if anybody else comes in. Okay, I think we're going to start. Hello, everybody. I'm Pete Rashevsky from Center for Traditional Music and Dance here in New York City. And if you know me, you'll probably understand how excited I am by what we're going to present today. And I'm going to put the URL just if you haven't seen it yet. Hold on, let me just put the URL in the chat. Let me make sure it's the right URL. Hold on. And I'm just going to plug it in the chat right now so you can look at it. That's the website. This is just a temporary URL. I'm hoping by tomorrow you can access it at josephmoskowitz.org. But for now, you can preview it at that. This is still very much a work in progress, but I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to have a really behind the scenes kind of sneak peek at this incredible new resource. So Joseph Moskowitz, for those of you who don't know, was one of the most incredible musicians you'll ever hear on record. And during the first part of the 20th century, especially in New York City, and later he moved to Akron, and then for a short time, and then finished his career in Washington, D.C. He was just a remarkable individual, restaurant owner, entrepreneur, musician, and kind of the center of, in many ways, of a really interesting multi-ethnic music scene on the Lower East Side of New York City. And he's been, just for me, as a fellow cymbalum player in Yiddish, it's a cymbal. He's been just an incredible person to try and work up repertoire from, listen to over the years. And every time I listen to a Joseph Moskowitz recording, which I think I know really well, I hear something else he's doing that I can't fathom and sounds incredible and something I didn't notice before. So it's a real thrill. It's been a real thrill during this process to become connected with the Rosenthal family. Moskowitz didn't have any children of his own, but he was married to a woman named Sally, and we're going to hear from Scott Rosenthal, who is Sally's grandson. And it's been great getting connected with Scott and Gene, and also James, and that whole family. And remarkably, I guess a couple years ago, or maybe even less than that, a box, I guess a magical box of Moskowitz related materials was found in the I guess in the attic of one of we'll hear more about this, the attic of one of
You will.
Sally's sons,
Yeah.
but Scott will tell us about this. And it's been an absolute treasure trove. So we're delighted the U.S. Library of Congress has acquired the archive, but what we wanted to do was make an access version of it available to musicians, researchers, fans, and things like that. So that's what you'll find on the website. It's an access version. The Library of Congress will take care of the long-term preservation and ultimately generate a really beautiful digital copy. But that's what we have. So I don't want to just to say it, what we're going to have a couple people talking. Scott's going to give just a little introduction to Uncle Joe from the family's perspective. We have a wonderful researcher and dear friend and cymbal player, Daniel Karkner, who's out in British Columbia, who's done some amazing research on the New York klezmer scene recently, and cymbal players in particular, and Moskowitz in particular. So we'll hear from Daniel. I'll take you through a little bit of the website navigation just to get you oriented. And we might even have a special performance for my dear friend in Montreal, Daniel Kundathegard, who's another Moskowitzite acolyte. So I guess without further ado, I'm going to attempt, using all my Zoom powers, to pin Scott Rosenthal. If everybody could just mute while we're presenting, and at the end we'll have time for questions and hopefully after that some schmoozing too. Okay, so I'm turning it over now to Scott Rosenthal.
Okay,
Go
I
ahead,
hope you can
Scott.
hear me. As you can probably see on your screen, and as Pete just said, my name is Scott Rosenthal. I'm one of, I don't know how many cousins that are going to be on here today, but there's going to be a few of us. And also, as Pete said, you might hear us refer to someone called Uncle Joe. That is how he was known in our family. But just to be clear, he wasn't our uncle and he wasn't our grandfather either. He was actually married to our grandmother, Sally, and that was her second husband. He was, our actual grandfather died young. He left 3 or 4 sons and a daughter. But long before our grandmother married Joseph Moskowitz, he was already known as Uncle Joe. He had a younger brother named Gustav Moskowitz, who was married to one of our grandmother Sally's sisters. So I know it's very confusing, but he was known to as Uncle Joe before he even married into the family. So to this day, we still call him Uncle Joe. He and my grandmother got married in 1933. They remained married until Joe's death in 1954. But most of us cousins are too young to have really known Uncle Joe. There's a few of our more senior cousins that may be here today that have a few childhood memories of Uncle Joe. We knew that Uncle Joe was a musician and a cymbal player, but it wasn't until I connected with Pete, probably over 20 years ago now, that we found out how much interest there was in Uncle Joe, his music, his influence on the klezmer world in the first half of the 20th century. And it's been quite an adventure since then, learning more about Uncle Joe and his career and his personality. And I want to give a special shout out to my cousins Gene and Jim, who discovered the aforementioned treasure box that Pete talked about. All kinds of great stuff was found in there. We didn't know that we had it, at least I didn't. And it's really been quite a discovery. So it's now been donated to the Library of Congress. We are just so pleased to see Uncle Joe get the recognition today and hopefully beyond today. Um, and I hope it all goes well, Pete. We really appreciate all your efforts to get this done. I think that's all I got to say for the moment. I think you're muted, Pete.
You're muted.
Yeah, there. Okay. All right,
Okay.
unmuted. Okay.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Scott. Let's see. I guess before we go forward, we have a little bit of a treat. We have there was at least one radio recording of an interview with Moskowitz. He appeared on comedian Ed Wynn's radio show, and let me just say this was back in 19. Hold on, I have it in here in a second. Let's get the right. Well, and I'll try to share the screen. So let me attempt to share the screen. Hold on a second. Chrome tab. Okay. So this was, as it says, Joseph Moskowitz on comedian Ed Wynn's Grab Bag in 1936. And so this is held at the Library of Congress. And so this was presented a few years ago, more than a few years ago now. Henry Sapoznik's archive was donated to the Library of Congress, and there was a symposium in honor of the donation. Henry had collected Yiddish radio programs, and an amazing collection. So Matthew Barton of the Library of Congress presented this interview with Joseph Moskowitz from Ed Wynn's Grab Bag. So let's see if I can just cue this up correctly. And let me know if you have.
Okay.
Scott, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear it?
From a little earlier in the 30s, 1936, Ed Wynn,
Can hear it, but barely.
a Jewish comedian, had on his show. Entertaining in New York for close to 30 years. He owned a series of restaurants on the East Side, and was quite well known to record for Victor. That's from the Victor catalog in 1916. National radio I know of by him is this from 1936, and as you'll hear, it sounds at least once in his restaurant in New York, and brought him on the show on the strength of that.
Mr. Moskowitz, this cymbalum is a very old and unusual instrument, isn't it?
My goodness, it should be nearly paid for by now, for heaven's sake. 17.
Mr. Moskowitz, have you always been a...
People came to hear me play. For instance, Mr. Hellman, Charlie Chaplin, Theodor Dreiser, Tasha Seidel.
Tasha Seidel? The musician, Tasha Seidel? That name always reminds me of somebody ordering beer. Tasha Seidel, you know what I mean? You know, a friend of mine used to play the cymbals. You know the cymbals? The cymbals. He played the cymbals until 19... Will you do that?
Very well, I will play it. I will play you two Oriental movements composed for myself.
Yeah, well, come over here. Go ahead. Let me hear him. Let me hear him.
Okay, well, sorry about that. It's not playing very well apparently. But it is there's a link to it on the website, and I'll take you there in a minute. So why don't we go now to Daniel Karkner?
Sure, I don't need any sound, so as long as you
That's
can hear me
good.
talking. Yeah.
All
I just
right.
have a couple of images, so let me share. So, okay. I can't share. Pete, can I send you, how can I share my screen?
Let me, you know what? I'm going to make you a co-host. So let me make you a co-host. Try it now, Daniel.
So, are you seeing this kind of black and white photo?
Yes.
Okay, good. Um, yeah, so I'll just talk for 5 minutes or so about. So I was looking through. Pete sent me some of these scores last year, and I was looking through them. And because I've been researching a lot of old characters from New York klezmer, I started seeing sometimes there'll be signatures on the scores, and then I started saying, "Oh, who's this? Who's that?" You know, and then some of the names I recognize, other ones maybe not. So I just sort of observe a couple of these characters who I notice in this music collection that we sort of inherited here. Um, so like Joseph played a lot more than just klezmer. He was playing classical music, sort of modern American music of the time. Romanian music was his favorite because he's from Romania, but he was also plugged into the New York klezmer world, and he was playing on recordings with them and probably playing in restaurants, his own restaurant and other kind of stages. So that kind of explains why these boxes that are kind of his working kind of his working music, where he's written notes on it, what to do in some cases, or who it comes from, or who it's for, things like that. So that's where you start seeing the names of some klezmer people. So I'll just go through a couple of them. So the biggest bunch is from this one guy, Jaime Milrad, who sent him sort of a booklet. I don't know, it's about 15 pages, I forget. And it's just sort of his own compositions. And this is the dedication on the cover. So it says, "To my loving friend Joseph Moskowitz, the famous cymbalum player, all my Jewish compositions and Romanian serbas from Hyman Milrad, New York City, 1925." So this guy was a bass player who probably plays on a bunch of old klezmer recordings from the 1910s, 1920s. And so there's just the booklet is stuff like this. So it's really neatly written out, his own compositions, just kind of in the going klezmer, Romanian kind of klezmer style of New York City. And a bunch of them he also sent to the Library of Congress to copyright. So the ones that have the numbers on the top, it matches ones that are in there. So he was obviously taking it very seriously. Uh, so yeah, that's it for him. There's only one for this guy in this collection, Sigmund Goldring, and I was kind of interested to see him in there. So um, I was I've been doing research into sort of advertisements of old klezmer bands from New York, and this guy came up in some of them, which is why I knew his name. So he was a band leader from about the same generation as Moskowitz, who was from Galicia, and he was sort of a violinist. And I don't think he ever recorded anything or really published anything. He was just sort of was a working klezmer, and so this piece in here. It says his signature at the bottom, and then it's a cornet B part, so it's probably one part out of many. I don't know how this one of all ended up here. And you often see little notes like this one says for Alice or something at the bottom. There's always little cryptic notes of where it was going for, what the context was, where it's supposed to be played, things like that, because these are just Joseph's working files basically. Um, this guy is more of like a known guy in klezmer revival people, Barish Katz. He was a violinist and he made a couple recordings, so we kind of know his name. So this one it just says B Katz at the top, but there's not really any other klezmer with that initial and name from New York that I know of. So it's probably him because he composed a bunch of pieces too. Um, so yeah, this guy Isidore Moskowitz. I'm not clear on who he was. There was a classical violinist called Isidore Moskowitz in New York at the time, but he didn't. I never found anything about him being connected to the klezmer world, so who's to say? But anyways, there's a bunch of handwritten scores like this in the Moskowitz stuff, and then there's also a published book where he typed up some of this stuff into sort of a suite of Romanian music and published it under Romanian title. So it's just kind of like a bunch of it. It's very similar to the stuff that Joseph Moskowitz is composing. So Serbas and Husids, this sort of Romanian Jewish dances and stuff. So I'm not quite clear who he is, but there's a lot of stuff by him in here. And then Max Leibovitz is pretty well known by klezmer fans. He was a violinist and he was sort of a very prolific recording guy. So he has dozens of old klezmer recordings made in the 1910s and 20s, and so it's not surprising that who is also Romanian and sort of from the same general area as Joseph Moskowitz. So there's a bunch of kind of Romanian style serbas in here that say Leibovitz or Max Leibovitz. Sometimes there's a bunch that just say ML, and it's again kind of like Romanian serbas. So I'm just assuming those are probably him. And the other connection is that one of Max Leibovitz's recordings was of Joseph Moskowitz composition. So they obviously had some kind of connection, just like we don't really know much about because it wasn't documented, but there was a connection there. Just to kind of sum it up, so just all the notes and the initials and all signatures and stuff just kind of makes us understand how the people who are kind of working in that general klezmer, New York klezmer world were just trading things back and forth. They weren't really jealously protecting their scores necessarily. I think they were working together and they say, okay, this is my composition we're going to play, or this is, yours. If we just look at the scores in general, we can see that Joseph's musical world was very eclectic because there's all kinds of music, not just klezmer, but all kinds of things from different countries and different concepts. And there's ones where he's trying to work something out, like taking a snippet and saying, develop this into something else. So it's like messy, but interesting. And then, yeah, I just hope that today's klezmer people will look at this stuff because there's all kinds of unheard stuff from 100 years ago in here. And that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Daniel. I'm going to just change the co-host. Okay. Thanks so much. So just I'm going to just give you quickly give you a sort of a broad outline of Moskowitz's life. For it, and I think one of the highlights of this new website is that we have a 60 some odd page memoir that he wrote in Romanian, and we're delighted we were able to have Craig Packard translate it, and it's an amazing tale. It really is. It's a real great memoir of especially of the Lower East Side, what it meant to be a restaurant owner on the Lower East Side back in the 1920s, and before that, talks about how Moskowitz learned to play the instrument. His father was a cymbal player. Moskowitz grew up in the town of Galatz. So for those of you who might know or don't know, I should say, Galatz is sort of it's kind of the last navigable point on the Danube as it goes out eastward into the Black Sea. There's a beautiful delta area. It's now a kind of a well-known wildlife bird preserve. So this is it's in Romania now, but it's in they would call the province of the Moldavian province in Romania. So this is southern Romania. I'm sorry, not southern Romania. It's on the tip of where the Republic of Moldova meets up against Romania. So he was. We learned from the memoir that he would actually, one of his early jobs as a kid was to play cymbal on the ferries that would go down the Danube at that point. After that, he somehow found his way. He traveled with a theater group, the Rising Stars Theater Group, which was, I guess, kind of like the Border Singers almost, traveling troupe like that. And at some point, he ended up, I guess, spending time in Budapest, where he switched from the small, very portable cymbal to a big, large Hungarian cymbalum. And then eventually finds his way to New York City, I think around 1904. Oh, excuse me. In New York City, it seems like he soon realized that he might not be able to make it totally as a musician. So he got into the wine. He started out by playing in wine cellars in New York, but I think soon became the proprietor of what I guess you would call wine cellars and restaurants, Romanian themed restaurants. And during that time, the Lower East Side was often called Little Romania. There were literally dozens of these Romanian-themed restaurants. And for the immigrant generation, it was sort of an opportunity for a nostalgia trip to places that reminded them of home and had the cuisine of where they were from, and with people like Moskowitz could provide the music as well. So Moskowitz had a series of these restaurants, and in the memoir we have kind of a fascinating tales of what it meant to own these places and make them operational and profitable, which was no easy feat. Ultimately, he and a partner, Lupowitz, opened up the famous Moskowitz and Lupowitz's restaurant on the corner of 2nd Avenue and 2nd Street in New York City. And that was a really famous restaurant. I mean, politicians would go. It was a place to be seen. Famous politicians would go there, actors, famous musicians, and things like that. And he would play there. But after some period of time, there was a falling out with Lupowitz. If you might find all about all the lurid details, and they are a bit lurid, you can check out the memoir, and it'll tell you about it. So Moskowitz sold his share of the restaurant back to Lupowitz, I guess, and headed to Akron, where there was a restaurateur there who wanted to create a Romanian themed restaurant and have Moskowitz play there. So he spent, I think, a couple of years, maybe less than a couple of years, playing in Akron at this restaurant. And then he, for the last stage of his career, he ended up in Washington, D.C. He was playing at a nice continental restaurant called Michel's on DuPont Circle. And we have actually a really great account from Michel's son, Victor Wiener, who lives out in the Bay Area. I think Scott and I have both been in contact with him over the years, and he had some great stories about Moskowitz. Particularly, the best of them is that while Moskowitz was playing there, one of his biggest fans was a young congressman from California who would go into the restaurant, apparently, and he would usually take with him a bottle of booze in a paper bag, so not to be seen with booze in public. And he would always, first of all, he would always ask if Moskowitz was going to be playing that night. And if so, he would come on in, and I guess he would have a meal and his booze, and he would sit in the back of the restaurant and enjoy the music. And this congressman later became vice president and then president. It was Richard Nixon. So it's kind of an amazing tale. And not only that, I have this theory. It's only a theory. I can't really prove it. But one of Nixon's first foreign trips as president, you can look it up, was to Romania, where there are pictures of him dancing hora with Ceausescu. So I don't make this stuff up, and I can't say for sure if sitting in Moskowitz's restaurant on all those occasions influenced him to reach out to the Ceausescu administration, but he did end up there and danced hora with Ceausescu, I think, at the Museum of the Romanian Peasant. So there's a little bit of international political color to the story. Okay, real quickly, I want to just show you the site and we can navigate it. I'm going to put one more time the link in the site, and this is still the working. Let me just put it over here. This is the working URL, and I'm hoping by tomorrow that josephmoskowitz.org will be working, and that'll be the new URL. So let me just put this in this. It's already been pasted a couple times, but I'm just going to put it in there one more time. Oh, thanks, Sandra Lehman, who has been tutoring me on my Romanian. Ceausescu. Okay, it's hard to get that soft SH in there. Okay, but there's the site. So if you click on that site, and I guess let me try doing it here too. I'm just a little bit leery about doing a share screen on this, but let me try. Chrome tab. No. Just Moskowitz archive. Okay, so I'm going to try sharing the site. Let's see if this works. No, that's not what I wanted to show you. So let me just stop that and try this again. Let me try this one. See if this is the right one. This looks like it might be. Let's see. No. Well, let's publish this, and then you can see the. No, I don't want to do that. Let me just try one more thing. I'm not sure why it's having so much trouble.
We've got something up here.
Yeah, that's not the final site here. Let me just see if I can take you to the publish site. That's what I want to show you. Okay, I think that might work. Yeah, all right. So this is the publish site. So I'll take you to the home page.
We're not seeing it, Pete. The screen didn't change when you changed.
Okay. Do you see that? That work?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Margaret. Okay, so let's through real quick. About you'll see a little bit of just an overview of Moskowitz. Also a link to Daniel put up a wonderful Wikipedia site about Moskowitz. So there's a link there that you can look at too, and also some information about the collection itself. So the collection itself. So again, this is only meant to be just an access copy. It's not like a high-res digitized version. The Library of Congress ultimately put that together. But I'll just show you. Basically, what we have is let me try and take you along as I show you site. But if you click on various, you can see it's kind of a work in progress. I'm not sure why it's right to that. All right, you know what? I'm not going to folders. So let me just take this off. Okay, so I'd recommend actually you go to right directly to the link yourself. And I think that'll just be easier for everybody, and I can just talk you through the site. But if you click on the link and the home from the home page, so what there is basically nothing too fancy, but for images, music, memoir, and ephemera for each, you'll see a bunch of Google folders, and you can click through those Google folders. And sometimes the Google folders are just a single image, and sometimes it's a whole bunch of images in the specific file that you're clicking on. So just be aware of that. And some highlights, that I've found. Dan alluded to some of the music from some of the other musicians that we see. There's a section under music, Moskowitz books, where he had, it looks like someone had worked with him to prepare 2 or possibly 3 books for publication of his music. And at least in one of them is a lot of Romanian music. One of them are the tunes, a lot of his Jewish tunes that we know from his recordings, and some that were never released. And so I found that really interesting, and they're kind of really nice copies of them too, transcriptions of them as well. In images, you can have a look through. There's a bunch of images of Moskowitz with people, presumably. We don't know who these people are, whether they're family members, they're other musicians, or famous celebrities. We just don't know. He was a really excellent, and I'm going to say this, meaning this in the best way, a kind of a self-promoter, which you need to be if you're an entrepreneur and trying to get your musical career going in America, New York, as well as your restaurant business. But he was really good about cultivating relationships with celebrities, especially with journalists. In the other, if you click on other, there's a whole list of kind of other resources that you could find on the web. But there's a number of books where there have been chapters written about Moskowitz, different articles, his restaurant, which was, kind of one of the quintessential Lower East Side places to go for tourists or New Yorkers looking for a fun night out. So it got written about quite a bit. And under ephemera, there's a lot of, you'll see some articles that have pictures of a couple of the restaurants. You'll see some menus from one of the at least one of the restaurants. You'll see a number of newspaper clippings. He did a really wonderful job of creating a personal archive of clippings of himself. Anytime he was mentioned in the newspaper, different newspapers or magazines. For me, I think the most exciting thing about the whole collection is the memoir. So again, you'll see there we have in the memoir section, both his original handwritten memoir as well as Craig Packard's translation. We just ask if anybody uses excerpts or whatever from Craig's translation, just to please credit Craig for that. And I've got some crediting information there. And you can see all sorts of things, like a trip Scott and I took to his gravesite, and we also saw Sally is buried nearby. And I think that's kind of about it. So we invite you to have at it, because it's really a really remarkable compendium of materials, and it's really exciting. And Daniel and Dan have been wading through it already. I've waded through some of it, but not all of it. So every time I look, I find something else that's really interesting. So I want to do one special thing, and then we're going to just open it up for questions at the end. Let's see, Dan Kundathagard up in Montreal. Are you in tune?
I'm as in tune as we're gonna be.
All right.
And
Hold on,
I'm
I'm
also
going
to invite a great bassist, Alex Rand, to come play with me. And so I'm going to play a tune from Joseph Moskowitz called... Oh, the name was kind of a mystery for us for a while, but somebody solved it. So it was recorded under the name, it looks like Chasen Senem. It turns out that this was, it should have been Kuzen Senem. It's a Turkish tune, or a suite of Turkish tunes. One of them was well known as a Turkish tune. One was more like or somebody found a source recording of a Crimean Tatar tune of the same melody, and so it the actual title is Kuzen Senem in Turkish is what is it's my daughter, I believe. Like it's a song that people would sing to their daughter, and so yeah, I'll get this ready to go and switch over. Just a second. That should be good to go. And Alex, can you play a couple things? Oh wow. I don't know what that's. That was interesting. Can people hear this? Does the bass sound okay?
Yeah. I personally can't hear it.
You can't hear it. Okay.
No. I can, but it's not very loud.
I can hear it.
Okay, I think we're good to go. you so much. And thanks so much to Pete Rashevsky for putting this together and all the work of publishing this archive, gathering, scanning. Thanks so much to the Rosenthals for finding this and keeping all of the Joseph Moskowitz legacy alive, and Dan Karkner for all of your amazing research. And I'm really excited to dig deeper into the stuff in this archive. I read the memoir, which was fascinating, and it's so exciting that this is going up on the internet and available to everyone.
Okay, great playing, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, okay. So thanks. I see Margaret and other people are giving me a nice dose of crowdsourced error checks on this site, which is actually really helpful. So yeah, if you find stuff, let me give everybody I'm just going to put my email address in the chat, because obviously if you find things that are not working, please let me know, and we will get them fixed up and republish the site. So, okay, well, I don't have anything else. With that, first of all, I really want to thank just the Atran Foundation and the NEA, who have been providing support to CTMD for and our partners for different Yiddish programs. And let's see, why don't we open it up to questions now? Now we'll see how that works. I'm going to also look at the chat. Let me just take everybody. So hopefully we can do this without being too terribly chaotic. Okay, I'm seeing already some good questions. Michael Alpert had a question for Daniel Karkner.
This is about the birthplace thing?
Yeah, about the Molov thing, but I mean, my guess is it's probably Molov Podolsk, in Podolia, but on the border of Moldova. Given the repertoire, just was wondering.
I'm sure it could be found in Russian documents, but in American documents, it doesn't get more specific than just Mogilev.
Yeah.
So,
great,
yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, cool.
Okay. Let's see. Andy Muchin and Laura Rosenberg asked, when and why did Uncle Joe live in Akron, and did he make music there? I can answer some of that. This was after he fell out. We learned this from the memoir. After he fell out with Lupowitz, he went to there was an entrepreneur who was setting up a Romanian restaurant. I don't know if it would be a Romanian restaurant. They called them sort of continental restaurants too, or they had sort of a variety of like European fare. And he wanted Moskowitz to play at the restaurant. Now, Rosenthal's, you have family in, let's see, Gene and Scott, where you guys are from the Cleveland area originally. Is that related to Moskowitz being in his time in Akron, or is totally unrelated?
That Cleveland is unrelated, but one of Sally's sons had moved to Akron, and maybe there was that connection. Scott, you probably know better.
Well, yeah, and they stayed there, as you know. That was our oldest uncle, Arthur.
Right.
They're still in that area to this day. So some of them anyway.
So that may have been the reason that Akron was a possibility for them to go.
I don't know if he continued with his music writing in Akron, but he was still playing at that point.
And this, I don't know if it was in the late 40s, but certainly the early 50s before he went to
Washington.
Washington.
Right.
So some late 40s, early 50s. I think the memoir actually you'll be able to date it through the
It
memoir.
probably does. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to go through the chat to see what other questions. Let's see. And if anybody has a question, please feel free to ask. I will give a shout out. Is Paul Gifford still here? So Paul's a dear friend, an amazing researcher of the hammer dulcimer and all its incarnations internationally. Wrote an incredible book, the Hammer Dulcimer: A History. So I don't know, Paul, if Paul's still there. Paul, do you have anything you may want to add today?
Paul, you need to unmute.
Been enjoying it. Nothing other than I heard. Remember Gus Horvath was a cymbal player from Detroit, gypsy cymbal player, and when he was a kid, he was living with his uncle in the Lower East Side, and to learn with the best known player of the Hungarian cymbalum there, whose name was Bela Giga Bela. But he said, I asked him about Moskowitz, and he said that there was a restaurant where he had a painting of himself playing out in front of the restaurant. I wonder if you so there was a photo of that anywhere.
There is a photo of that it was published in it might have been in the Forwards, I think a Yiddish language newspaper. But if you go to Ephemera, you'll see that clipping.
Oh, that's good to know. I mean, that's just that was word of mouth. So the other thing I was interested in what you might have learned about Michel Wiener, because I was curious about his concept of gypsy music. If on Romany Records they did a LP. It's Moskowitz was supposed to be on it, but apparently he died before it was issued. And I haven't heard it in years, but I wonder if what he might have said, because I think it was a lot of Romanian. But I haven't listened to it so long. I don't remember. Did he say? Did you learn much about Michel Wiener?
I have to check my note. This was a number of years ago, and it wasn't a very long conversation with Victor. So I'm not sure if he's still around or not. I'll have to check. Moskowitz, though, he did record at least two albums for Romany Records, or one is a Joseph Moskowitz Cymbalum Melodies. And actually, I think in Ephemera, you'll see we have the album cover. And I think Daniel Karkner is Cymbalum Melodies. Is that album on your website, your YouTube page?
No, it isn't. It's somewhere on YouTube. I heard it before on YouTube. I don't know if it still is.
Yeah, when we find it, we'll put a link on the website to it. So that's Moskowitz as a soloist, but there was also a second album that he recorded, I guess, with Michel Wiener playing violin. I've heard that, so I know it's somewhere available. I think someone had sent it to me, and basically on that recording, it sounds to me like a Hungarian noto recording, and Moskowitz is sort of the accompanist on.
I don't know the other Roman. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, that one, at least it's a 12-inch Romany Records, and there's no cymbal on it. It's and then there's also a cello solo of Wiener's son, I guess. But I was curious. It says on the record that Moskowitz was on it, but the actual recording he's not. So I figured he must have died about the time it was recorded.
I wonder if we're talking about the same album, though, because I've heard an album where he's the accompanist.
I've never heard. You
And
sure about that?
I
We've never
thought so.
heard any
I'll
accompaniment.
check. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So,
Well, anyway, okay. That's all.
all right. Well, thanks, Paul. Let's see. Oh, Michel played violin. Michel was the violinist, and it was Michel's restaurant. Like that was the name of the restaurant. Was Michel's restaurant on DuPont Circle in Washington, which I actually I haven't been able. I think we have a picture of it, but we haven't been able to find out too much about that restaurant actually, which would be a good place to do some more research. I mean, hopefully Victor's still around. Let's see. Scott asked, how will people be able to access the LOC materials in the future if they're interested? Well, supposedly it's supposed to be digitized over time. For now, I think it would have to be by appointment at the Library of Congress until they, make it available over the internet. But who knows how long that'll take. So that's why we created this this kind of this access copy of the materials. And let's see. Oh, any guesses? Laura Rosenthal wants to know, any guesses about how many Cymbalum players are alive today? Wow, that's a great question. We have at least 3 on this call. If you go to places like, Hungary, we're talking about the national instrument of Hungary, basically. At least I don't know if that's actually been something that has ever actually been proclaimed, but it's I think a lot of people say it is the national instrument of Hungary, and Romania. It's taught in conservatories in places like Chisinau, in Moldova, in Budapest, probably still in Bucharest and Romania and other conservatories in Eastern Europe. The instrument, and the best source for this is Paul Gifford's book, which does an unbelievable job of dealing with hammer dulcimers in all sorts of different traditions around the world. But in Eastern Europe, the instruments played everywhere from, I guess, as far west as you could even say like the Swiss Alps. And there's a version, kind of a modified version that took root in Germany called the Hochbrett. And really from that part of Europe all the way east and down south to Greece, where it's known as the Santuri. So. Anybody have any other questions? Western Ukraine too. That's right. Belarus. Yes, Belarus has their own version of the instrument too.
Yeah, Pete, can you remind us where Moskowitz is buried? You said outside DC. I don't remember where you said it was.
It's Adelphi, Maryland.
Okay.
Which cemetery is it, Scott?
Mount Lebanon Cemetery. It's near University of Maryland, if that helps.
Yeah, and we have some pictures, I think, under other. Might be under. It's either under or maybe it's ephemera. Maybe it's ephemera. I can't remember, but where you can look at a visit that Scott and I took to the cemetery. Okay, well, I don't see anything else in the chat, so why don't we do this? What relationship does it have to the pantaloon? I'm gonna defer to Paul Gifford on that. There's a whole chapter about the pantaloon, I believe. So you can read his book, or Paul wants to say something.
No, but what it basically, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The thing about I determined basically that it's associated with what's known as gypsy music in Hungary. It's played, but it's been adopted into classical music in the late 19th century. But that gypsy music, as it kind of developed, came from migrating Jews from Bohemia in the mid 18th century, And so it was violin, lead, and playing by ear, or although they might know tunes by note. And this is from uh, contemporary writings, but the cymbal player plays by just accompanies and improvises an accompaniment. And then you have a bass, maybe a brach or a second, a viola. I mean, sorry, a violin playing a contra, and that's the basic setup. And then that spread not only to Hungary but all around Bohemia. I mean, into Bavaria, Upper Austria, most, and so the fashion for it even went from Hesse in Germany in the 18th century when they went to the Volga region in Russia, and they preserved this style where it died out in Germany itself, and so the Jewish origin is pretty clear, and then obviously there's lots of references to Jewish players going back to the 17th and 18th centuries. But yeah, it's also that it's associated almost exclusively with Roma in Romania, and they don't even, I mean, it's almost exclusively. In fact, when I asked Nikolai Ferraro, I said, are there any, gajos who play the instrument in Romania? No, of course not. He said they just look at it as that's a gypsy thing. So anyway,
Yeah,
that's a little of the background, but that's not true in Poland or Lithuania or Belarus, so, or Ukraine.
yeah, I was interested in its relation to the Pantalon because I work with early keyboard instruments, building and restoring and things like that, and I know that I've heard it said that the early like German square piano was associated with the Pantalon, which was sort of like some kind of hammered dulcimer, from what I understand.
Well, from the descriptions, it's elaborate with both gut and metal strings, and it would have been amazing to maintain and tune. So there are just a few players, and mostly like in Austria. And it didn't have any connection to the popular use of the instrument.
Yeah, okay.
But it developed, I mean, the earlier version, it was a popular folk instrument, whatever, in Switzerland and Austria and Germany.
Interesting. Well, thanks a lot for that.
Sure.
Sure. And, Moskowitz was very much a part of this cymbalum legacy because his father was a cymbalum player. Actually, what my favorite photo, which is in the archive, there's one picture of him playing as a young man, playing a small cymbal. So it's a small traditional instrument. I mean, maybe that's the instrument that he played on the ferries in Galatz, because at some point, he talks about this in his memoir, he didn't move, but he goes to Budapest, and that's where he starts playing the large concert cymbalum that you see in restaurants in Budapest, and has become a concert instrument performed on concert stages usually. So it's very, very interesting.
Excuse
me. Go ahead. Is that Andy?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Andy.
Hi there. Really interesting program. I just want to call your attention to a question Jim Rebhan asked at 12:01 p.m. about copyright law and scores. Yeah, I want to know the answer. Do you know anything about it?
Well, that's my understanding. I thought it's. I actually I don't know. I looked it. I just looked it up this morning. I saw something about 70 years after someone's death. But I don't know how music works because there's a little thing called the Beatle law, where they don't want someone doesn't want the Beatles stuff to go into public domain, and they're trying very hard to prevent that. So I can't remember how that works with. I mean, does anybody know about U.S. copyright law and time frames on that?
It basically comes down to money. if it's worth commercial or
Surprise,
not.
surprise, yeah.
And this is Gene Barron. The copyright laws are different for sheet music and for recordings. Recordings were updated several years ago that anything that's anything that's 100 years old or older now goes into public domain. And I think I heard sheet music was 95 years, but I'm not really sure about that.
Okay, so I guess anything that's on the site in terms of sheet music should at this point be public domain, if we're understanding that correctly.
Yeah, just remove it if anybody complains.
Yeah.
That's the best policy, I think.
So, and a lot of it's interesting. I think Daniel Karkner's been seeing a lot of this too. That one thing that the musicians would do they would submit the way to copyright is to submit it to the copyright office. So all that stuff's now in actually at the U.S. Library of Congress. I think it's still all online. You can browse all the a lot of the manuscript copies that were submitted for copyright protection. So you have a lot of original scores. I mean, maybe a couple by Moskowitz, but people like Abe Schwartz and Harry Kendall, so some of the famous klezmer musicians of the time. A lot of their scores are on the Library of Congress website. It's an amazing resource. So, okay, well, gosh, we have such an amazing bunch of people. If you guys anybody wants to just stay around and talk about Moskowitz or klezmer or East European music or whatever's on your mind. But thanks so much. Thanks again to the Rosenthal family and for presentations by Daniel and Dan, which was really great and prevented me from having to talk the whole time, and which I'm sure gave everybody a good break. But I guess we'll feel free to stick around. Again, one more time, as of hopefully tomorrow, I'm going to put it in the link here. It will be josephmoskowitz.org will be the place to go. Okay. But what I'm going to do is I'll also put a site on the, sorry, I just sent that to one person instead of the whole people, all the people. Let's get this to everybody. Just going to put it in the chat one more time. Okay, so hopefully that'll be up tomorrow, josephmoskowitz.org, or if not tomorrow, very soon. And we'll also put stuff, if you look on the Center for Traditional Music and Dance website, we'll have information about accessing the site as well. So you can always check that out. Okay, so thanks so much. And if anybody wants to just stick around and talk, I'm going to do that. So we can stick around for a little while. But thanks again.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, Pete, I had a question. Do you have any sense the little one that he traveled with, was that more a straight chromatic tuning like a Santuri?
I think it was, because he talks about learning how to. I think he talks about learning how to play the Hungarian cymbalum when he's in Budapest. Presumably, he didn't. I mean, just by the timing, it's pretty obvious. Yes, it for sure was. Paul, do you want to say any more about like cymbal tunings of that time?
No, Paul, you're still muted.
The so-called Romanian tuning is a little different than the standard Santuri tuning. Starts on a C sharp and G sharp on the first course, then it goes down to C and G, then it goes, the next one is D and A. I mean, I always see that as a kind of a strange, but it's an interesting thing. Now and actually that was like Nikolai Ferraro learned on that tuning, but he says nobody uses it now, and the older sambals in Romania are set up for that tuning, but they've all been converted to the Hungarian tuning. But that's undoubtedly what he used. It's similar to what they use in the Ukraine and Belarus and so on.
Because the first one I ever played on was from it was this Hungarian band, and it was small, kind of like my Santuri, and it was tuned pretty much like the Santuri. It was just straight chromatic up. It didn't do weird things.
That was they were Hungarians.
They were Hungarian. I forgot. It was either Teka, maybe it was Teka. It was at a Hungarian symposium, and that's what the guy was playing, and that was the first one I ever played on.
He wasn't. When was that? Was that in the 70s?
It was 1982 at the Hungarian symposium in New Jersey, I guess.
Was this a small one that they had made? That
I don't know. I don't know if they made it, but this was the one that he had with him. I guess that they would come over with him.
Yeah, I assume that would be just standard Hungarian tuning.
No, it was because I had the diagram. It was straight. It was that center section was just straight like the Santuri. So
if they're Hungarian, it was either experimental thing or something like that, I would think.
Actually,
Wait,
first of all, guys, I'm still recording because I think there might be some really interesting information that comes up in our chat. So just be aware we're still recording this. If anybody really wants me to turn off the recording,
I was just leaping in here.
Paul, I have a question.
I was just leaping in here with Paul and Judy to ask. Paul, would that be possibly one of the varieties of Hungarian kis cymbalom, the small cymbalom that, or maybe a historical reconstruction?
Something like that.
Given that it was Teka and one of the Hungarian folk revitalization groups.
Yeah. In fact,
I think we lost
you.
Maybe Judy remembers this Robert Mandel.
Oh, I remember
touring
Robert
around
Mandel.
in the United States about that time, and he claimed to have promoted a small one, and maybe that was it. And that the maker, the state maker, the Bohawk or whatever, and they did have some. I remember at that time with carved sides. And I suspect that's right, what it was. Not something that was in traditional use, but something that they wanted to use as a small one, but they probably developed their own tuning. But this kis cymbalom, like the catalogs from the turn of the century, they basically go down to a G or an A on the left. So like maybe three or four bass courses on the left, and that would be a portable one, a small version. I mean, it seems to me that the Chunda brought in a style that was current in Upper Austria, in that area, and where he was from actually, and then it really took off. It was standardized from the 1870s or 80s, because if you look at photos, sometimes or paintings in the 1860s, they're still small, portable, what they can put around their neck with a neck strap. But by another decade, 1870s and certainly 1880s, it's pretty heavy. No dampers yet, though.
So, Paul, that's interesting. So you think that, well, when you talk about Hungarian tune, I'm especially talking about the C major being in the middle, right in the middle of the instrument. Was that something that Chunda really introduced from Austria, or was that kind of, because I think you had in your book, you have some, at least one historical tuning, which it has that, I think, from the Czech Republic.
Yeah, I think some of this style, they're large instruments, relatively large, with a bass bridge on the lower left. And the actual tuning varies, from the standard Hungarian tuning. But in general, and it would have four like sound holes, and a pretty big instrument. So I mean that's the style of instrument that they were using in what's now southern Czechia, I guess, and northern Austria. Basically, that died out, and then they adopted the Hungarian style later in Moravia. So, but and also the other thing about that this style, the construction is quite different from the Romanian, or Ukraine. I mean, the basic construction is the same whether you go from Lithuania all the way down to Moldova and Romania, and it's fairly light. But the Hungarian has a heavy back, and it's fundamentally a different construction. But obviously, so in Romania, as it is now, I mean, historically the Hungarian part has the Hungarian instrument, whereas the Moldova and Wallachia was coming from Ukraine, Galicia, so on, from that direction. So they came two different directions.
Let me understand.
Yeah, and
so let me. Oh, go ahead.
No, well,
I was.
Go ahead. It's a little confusing because you can read Romanian articles or something, and they will talk about the rural and the urban sambal, and it's a little confusing because the big ones can be found in villages, and the small one can also be found in Bucharest. But really, what it was that some Romanian musicians was like Moskowitz they were adopting this Hungarian instrument and starting to play classical music. I mean, the best known is Lika Stefanescu, and he ended up playing in Russia until World War One. Made records and so on. And there was a whole school that followed him, and they were selling big ones. The Hungarian manufacturers were exporting to Romania, and they were also making small ones in Romania at like 1910, 1920 in that era. So, and gradually the Romanians, all the ones who were playing in restaurants in that period, they were taking the big ones. And so that's basically the difference. But I mean, they would also still use a small one to play as well on site. And Nick used to do that until he lost his father on the way to Washington, as you know. Somewhere in Breezewood, there's people that found one, I think. So keep your eyes out for an antique Romanian sambal meek.
Oh, real in Breezewood?
Yeah. It's where he lost it.
Oh no. Paul, just to clarify. So if you were in, say, I don't know, the Czech Republic or Slovakia in the mid 19th century, what would have been the typical tuning? Would it have been this this diatonic tuning with chromatic notes, like kind of the Hungarian tuning, or would it have been more of a straight semitone chromatic system?
I don't know, because I'm only going on antique instruments. There's a couple of museums in the Leipzig that have the tuning, I think, but they basically, I could look it up maybe, but I don't recall the exact, wasn't exactly. It might have been like a C, it may have had a C sharp and a D, and they probably varied individually. So there wasn't anybody manufacturing them. So there wasn't any standardization, and then people always change the tunings. So, yeah, I mean, the whole village tuning or whatever is all individualistic, and there's some basic things in common, like that C sharp drop to C, that but on an instrument could be, well, the first one is B and then followed by C sharp and then C, or it could be A that jumps up to C sharp and then goes back to C, that kind of thing. But my theory, and it's pretty much a theory, it was that the earliest ones were just diatonic 4 courses, basically, and maybe 3 bass courses. And then it made its way to Galicia, let's say Lemberg, or Ukraine, whatever, in that area, and somehow the diatonic tuning wasn't adequate. They had to have add one more. If you put it in front of if you take a regular tuning, it would be C, D, E, F, and then on flip the other side of the bridge, G, A, B, C. Well, if you just add a C sharp and a G sharp to the front of it, then you can suddenly sort of play chords D minor with A7, or a few minor changes, G, maybe G minor, and so that, because, or not so much you're not playing the melody, but you're providing a little bit of harmony, because the music is not exclusively diatonic. Does that make sense? Or am I nuts?
No.
Musically, it certainly makes sense.
Sort of. I mean, because some of the oldest, or not the oldest looking instruments I saw in this museum in Belarus, and I guess this style also exists in Ukraine, they just have this small number of strings, the five or six courses, which could be a survival of an early version of that. So just an idea, anyway.
Paul, to come back to Romania for a second, I mean, in terms of the, what former, basically, I mean, Hungarian, Transylvania, essentially, Hungarian and German, etc., and Habsburg, Romania, in contrast to Wallachia, Moldavia, former Ottoman Romania, does the fact that in Wallachia and Moldavia, does that suggest that the instruments, I mean, I know this might all be in your book and I either haven't, I have forgotten what's there, or that was the part I didn't read or something.
Yeah.
Does that suggest Ottoman origin or influence, or especially Ottoman Greek, the Phanariats, et cetera, in terms of the introduction of that instrument to Eastern and Southern, what's today Eastern and Southern Romania? What's your take on that?
Well, the thing about that is that the illustrations and so on of Lotari from the 19th century, it's never there. It doesn't, and at first, like in literary sources, actually, the guy confused it with a canon, so he had some, but he also, I think it says this is a Jewish instrument. So it was like, it was familiar with, they were familiar with it with Jews, but not like this guy, this reference, 1744, Solomon Sambalaru or whatever, I think, in Yash, right? Yeah. And so it was clearly used by Jews in Moldova, but and then there was a survey done in the 1880s it was folklore in Romania, and one of them was the presence of the sambal. And this is mid 1880s, and I think there are a couple of villages in Wallachia and a couple in Moldavia, but it hadn't spread. And then, but by 1900, it was quite common in Bucharest and in general. So it seems like it went from being a Jewish instrument in 1870, strictly Jewish, to widespread among the Lautari by 1900 in at least around like Wallachia and parts of Moldova anyway.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going, as far as the Santur, obviously the Turks were, or in the 18th century, used it along with like the Muskal, the Nai, the pan flute. And so there must have been that, but I don't think there's a direct association because it's fundamentally a different instrument because the bridges are movable and the structure is different. And but another bit that kind of fits into this was, and this is something written during the 50s in Romania, and there were just the history of the instrument in Romania. Well, there was a mention, I think it was 1567, just with it had a source. So I actually tracked down the source, and it was a history or it was primary sources relating to the history of the border between the Turkish area and Austria, Cluj, I think, or Cluj, and I think they mentioned giving the Pasha on the other side a hochbrett. So there was this transfer from of a Western instrument to local Turks, but that's just no standard or transmission. I think that but one thing that's interesting though, so in Moldova and Wallachia, where it wasn't in use in the early 19th century, in the Hungarian areas, it was. So it was part of the Hungarian, Transylvania, it was part of the Hungarian thing. I mean that the gypsy musicians were playing it in Transylvania then. And that was part of the Hungarian thing. But the actual the Romanian, that it didn't hit that. That came through Jewish, I'm convinced on that. That's Jewish transmission.
Yeah, and I mean, would you go further? Could we maybe postulate further to say that, Roma, Lotari, Roma picked it up, and it's you can kind of imagine it spreading like wildfire from Eastern Romania, Moldavia, down into Wallachia, Oltenia, where it's not so as common.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then when after 1918 or 19, then it never really took off in Transylvania. It kind of declined or whatever. I guess it's maybe in cities or where there were Hungarian musicians. I mean, a little bit in Timișoara, etc. But by and large, it's not much there. So, but it's common in the villages, and at least in parts of Moldova, Moldavia, whatever you want to call, and Wallachia, right? So Muntenia. But I thought that I mean, years ago, a friend of mine had known a Romanian player in Detroit, and he said the tuning was strange because it started with C sharp, then it went down to C, and then you look into that. It's fascinating, and Pete, by the way, you should do something with Lipyansky, Lipyansky family, right? It must have been an
yes. It's definitely planning on it.
Yeah.
Definitely planning on it. Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything. I just have an anecdote or two relating to Moskowitz, which is the one that really comes to mind is when I worked at YIVO in the late 80s and beginning of the 90s, someone who worked in the library there was a guy named Herbert Lazarus, who if you knew him well, you knew he was called Tika. And Tika. He was from Galatz. He was then, he seemed kind of ageless, but he was he wasn't an older person. He was maybe in his, I mean, I was in my 30s then. Herbert, Tika was probably in his 40s, maybe later 40s, 50s, something like that. Um, I remember, when I heard that he was from Galatz, he used to be the person that would go and fetch the books from the stacks and so forth. He wasn't, like he wasn't chief librarian or anything. He was, a literally a factotum with the emphasis on the tote. And so I heard, we started to talk, and I heard he was from Galatz. I said, did you ever hear of, Yosela Moskowitz, a klezmer cymbal player? Herbert, he knew Yiddish too. He was much more comfortable speaking Romanian, but he lived in Israel. He could read Yiddish, et cetera, et cetera. And he is, immediately he said, oh, Yoshka Tsimbalaru, and which I know that Dan has put a couple of these names in the Wikipedia piece, but said Yoshka Tsimbalaru, and he started telling me. He said, he was great. He was the man. He said, and his father, Moshe Tsimbalagiu, which is the more Turkish form of the Romanian Turkish
Right.
form of the Romanian term for Tsimbler. And he told me a bunch of things. I never recorded him, and he was not a klezmer enthusiast or stuff as much as he was very much Jewish identified. But as soon as I mentioned Moskowitz, he was like, oh yeah, he was our boy. And so was his dad. And I loved that. I was like, we have like a through line here. Back to, for sure the end of the 19th century, etc. And I feel like there was another oh no, this is like just anecdotally, the brief time that I spent aspiring to finish my BA at Empire State College in New York, which was the kind of university without walls of the state university system. My advisor there was a guy named Joe Goldberg, whose parents had owned and operated the Romanian wine cellar called the Carmen Silva, who was the Queen Consort of Romania, on the Lower East Side. And I mean, he kind of regaled me with tales of growing up in that ambience and, and having seen Moskowitz play any number of times and so forth. But I also never recorded Joe, but I made some notes in terms of talking with him. But so, yeah, definitely in the popular in popular parlance in some quarters, for sure.
Do you guys have any insight on the Romanian cons or in New York among the Lower East Side or old Jewish restaurants, businesses, delis, whatever, about the Romanian thing, whatever that is, or is it something they adopted as a style, or is it just ethnic Romanian Jews? You know what I mean?
Sammy's Romanian restaurant, it's still there.
Yeah, like that.
Have you been there? Right.
No, but I've heard of it.
Yeah,
but, I mean,
there's a woman in LA who did her, I don't know if it was her dissertation, but she did a big study on that whole scene of Little Romania. And I think one of her main points is that there was sort of a lot of adopting of gypsy identities by a lot of people involved in this scene as part of kind of an exotification of the scene. So it was sort of like it kind of filled two roles. Interesting. One was nostalgia for people who were actually from there, and then there's this sort of more mythical sort of nostalgia for people who weren't necessarily, maybe they were from Poland or something, but had this idea of what Romania was in the Jewish collective conscious, or not only Jewish but other words, and so that was sort of played to as well.
Do you think, does that also go true of musical styles in a way, like
Yiddish theater for sure?
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Zev writes about this a lot in his, like, why the Bulgar became the dominant American musical klezmer musical form, because it back to Romania, which wasn't so religious. The Jews all left their rebbes behind and came to Romania and lived it up. What happened in Romania stayed in Romania. I mean, I'm sort of like I'm embellishing quite a bit, because Romania and Moldova had its rebbes too and things like that, but not like Poland or.
So you think that they're in New York, they're free to drink and whatever, go to underground, grills with steaks and peppers and all that sort of imagery that I don't know what it is. Like I guess the pictures of Michelle's or whatever, the imagery isn't there one where he's wearing like a scarf around his head and maybe an earring or
Michelle might have, yeah. I don't think Moskowitz did, but yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, Michael. Do you have anything to say about this? I mean, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it pervades the whole,
topic.
So much of the culture. I mean, from pretty clearly from sometime in the late 19th century, the whole Romanian mystique. That it was like, I mean, I often compare it to like the Latin craze in the the late 40s or something like that. I mean, it had pretty clearly spread in Eastern Europe, where, I mean, I know Zev writes about this too, but I mean, many of us or some of us have talked about this for years, that it's clear that the Romanian mystique, Romanian style tunes, Romanian style music, probably seemingly dancing too, had spread north in the East European Jewish world, which is part of a long, I mean, a centuries old pattern of cultural trends moving from south to north in the East European Jewish world, as well as in tandem with emigration from the north to the south in the East European Jewish world. So Polish, Galician Jews coming down into Moldavia and Romania, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But so, I mean, and a good example of this, I mean, my friend and someone I learned a great deal from, Bronya Sakina, who was from southwestern Ukraine. But she was from Podolia, but not so close to Romania, from around Uman in Yiddish, which to me is like, it's pretty close to the Romanian cultural area. But I remember I just was recently listening to an interview where I asked her, what was your sense of like being, what you weren't so far from Romania. What was your connection to all that? And she was born in 1910, by the way, and only came to the States in 1980. I just heard her say, it's like, oh, Romania's given, if it is given Starkvat, it was really far away. It was about 100 miles. And at the same time, the thing that has always, I mean, I often talk about this when I teach, that she said was, the more Romanian it was, the more our klezmorim liked it, talking about the music, tunes, and the more we liked it. And it was clear that there was a Romanian craze, clear to me anyway.
I found years ago a little, I guess it's the annual, I can't remember the exact name of the series, but it's annual Jewish, whatever, anyway, an organization, whatever, but it was, I think, from 1903 or 4, and they said in recent years there was a fashion for Romanian wine cellars going everywhere, and I don't think that's strictly relates to immigration. I mean, immigration from Romania, because
right.
So would that fit in with that there people see it as this is something that they can attract business because it's desirable and to the obviously immigrant population, even though they might be from Poland or wherever.
For sure, that's my sense of it. I mean, and the thing is, I mean, in kind of late late 19th century, early 20th century Eastern Europe. I mean, Romania was like, well, I mean, I think this phenomenon goes back to 1812 when Bessarabia became part of the Russian Empire and so forth. Moldavia, Romania was like California. It was a place full of economic opportunity for people. It was warmer. You could grow grapes, make wine, and the whole thing fit together. I mean, I think my sense of it is that it was a combination. Pardon me, I'm getting a phone call from within Scotland here, and did I just cut us off? No, okay. The Yeah, I mean, it was I like a combination of both a kind of cultural and economic pattern, and also something that could be marketed. It was very much marketed. I mean, you look at the Jewish journals. I mean, the ones, for example, I mean, that were from the early 20th century in the Russian Empire, Rassvet, ones written in Russian, they have ads in them. They're ads for like Manischewitz and the wine companies that continued that we still have in the US and that market wine throughout the world. I think maybe
Oh, that's
the
interesting.
ones in Israel, but and they're marketing the whole from our vineyards in Bessarabia, and these kind of the illustrations of the good life in Romania and all that sort of stuff. It's all there. And Carmen, I'm wondering does this say anything to you from the Romanian American
It
perspective?
says a lot to me. What you're talking about, it's to be discovered in a non-Romanian Jew, Aaron Lebedev, because so many of his theater songs are all about the great life and Romanian wine cellars and Kashkaval and Romanian style foods.
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
one studies his theater songs, you get a picture of what's going on. And he wasn't even from Romania. I don't even think he stepped in Romania during his long career. The fact that you mentioned a wine cellar called Carmen Silva, most of you probably don't know who Carmen Silva was. The literary name of Queen Elizabeth of Romania, the wife of Carol I, the first modern Romanian king who came in and ruled for 48 years. And she was a poet. She was German, of course, just like her husband. And she was a poet and had a well-known literary salon. Many Romanian American well, not many, but a number of Romanian American organizations, and I'm referring to non-Jewish Romanian, they named ladies' auxiliaries or clubs after her, for example. It was like an honorary thing because she was well known. And her works were actually translated from German into Romanian and especially English, and they were well published here in the 1890, 1910 era. They were quite popular.
Right. I mean, I know as far as I know, your family, and I mean, most of the community was actually from Banat and Transylvania.
Romanian pre-World War I Romanian immigration, it is all Gentile from Austria-Hungary. Very, very, very they're all from Banat or from Transylvania. And that also includes the ethnic Germans that came from what is now Romania. They were from Western Romania, from the Banat. They were Roman Catholic Swabians. From Transylvania, they were Protestant Lutheran Germans. From old Romania, quote, the kingdom known as the Regat, very few Gentiles actually came to America. Some did. Some did, but the overwhelming majority of people that immigrants from old Romania were Jewish, and for good and certainly for very good reason.
Hey, I want to jump in with a question if I
Hey, Aliftina.
Please do. Please do.
It's been weeks.
It's been weeks, Michael.
Anyhow,
I'm calling you. I'm in Kishinev right now, actually. So I'm sending you all greetings from Moldova. And I wish I could have joined earlier, but I was on my way. So I just jumped in now and probably already talked about everything that I wanted to hear. But I'm here to present at the seminar, and I'm going to talk sort of about the Klasmorim here. And so I'm very curious to if you happen to come across anything in the material about Moskowitz going to Istanbul. Was there any things about that?
I can't remember anything about him going to Istanbul, but you could check because the memoir. You could read through the memoir.
It's
where he tells
available.
his whole story. There's one great episode where he goes to Paris and he's seeing friends in Romanian bands playing in Paris,
right?
Things like that. I don't recall anything about Istanbul or
the Wikipedia page on him says that he went to Istanbul before coming
does
to
it?
the States. Yeah.
Oh,
But I haven't. I didn't manage to find any other sources on it. But it would make sense because people were traveling to Istanbul a lot, talking about going south.
Didn't Naftali Brandwine also go to, came via Istanbul or something like that?
Very possible. Very
Pete,
possible.
do you know about
I
that?
mean, for gosh sakes, he was working on a ferry by the at the mouth of the Black Sea. So it's very possible. Very possible. And we know that there were a lot of Ashkenazi Jews in Istanbul at that time, too.
Right.
I mean, possibly even I've heard as many as possibly half of the Jewish population of Istanbul was actually Ashkenazi.
This is impossible. No.
Yeah. I mean, there were about
No. There was an amount, but not half of the population.
Yeah.
But what I can say, what I can tell you from field observations in Istanbul is that the Sephardim, they have a lot of names for the Ashkenazi, and one of them is Vuz.
From what?
Good. Vuz, because Vuz, because they would go around and say what.
Oh, this was
clueless people.
Which is that's a common. I mean, also in Israel, since from Ottoman times, was the name for the non-Ashkenazim, often called Ashkenazi Jew, Vus, Yiddish Jews. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still it's still part of Israeli Hebrew to this day. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. There were, as far as numbers, there were about 10,000 Ashkenazim in 1914 in Istanbul, if that places it for.
How many?
10,000.
Wow, where did you find
10,000 Ashkenaz?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that from you can check it, but I mean, it's that I think was the official Turkish or something census from 1914 at least.
Okay. So Alevtina, what are you presenting in Kishinev? What's your topic?
Well, I'm talking about Brigovsky and Yekta, sort of a political Rauf Yekta, who was a musicologist who was born in the Ottoman Empire but lived through sort of the change in political government. So the beginning of the Republic, and what he did was that he brought in the Ottoman court music into the academic field and sort of made a Western system to transcribe stuff. And much of the theory that is taught today is based on his writings.
When you say most of the theory of Ottoman or Turkish classical music?
Yeah, like what they call Turkish classical music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, which is also a term that he coined. Yeah.
He wrote in French, right? In 1920 something. I forget the.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, 22.
that's me.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. But I'm sorry for hijacking the conversation.
No. We all want to hear more about your research, actually. So,
Yeah.
how long are you in Kishinev for?
Just a few days, and then I'm going back to Istanbul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you living in Istanbul now?
I'm going in and out. Now I'm there. I'm working on a research project on Isa Kremer, the Yiddish singer, because she spent some time in Istanbul as well, and so I have a research colleague, and we're working on trying to find more stuff on her.
There must have been a lot of refugees after 1917. I know there were a lot of Russians until about
Yes.
1925, right, or so.
Yeah.
Yes. It was a boom. It was a boom. Apparently, they introduced mixed swimming in the Bosphorus.
Oh.
Yes. Until before the Russians, it was separated, but after the Russians, people started swimming together.
Oh.
Pish pash. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
All right.
But I'm very excited to read the memoirs.
Good. It's a really exciting read. I suggest we all get the rights before Netflix does. Well, I guess it's in public domain now, but it's a really good. He spins a really good yarn.
He's a good storyteller.
Amazing tale.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing him. I mean, unfortunately, we couldn't hear him when he was talking with what's his name?
Edwin.
On the radio show. But I mean, yeah, he's clearly a showman.
Totally, yeah. He's in one. There's one Yiddish film he appears in. Lebendig Yosem. There's a which I think
In the restaurant.
Yeah, there's
Right, it's in the restaurant. You see the stairs going down to the restaurant, and then he's playing with what? Olshanetsky, I think.
I don't know. It's a very short scene.
Have you put that scene, or will you put? Can you put that scene on the a link to the YouTube or something on the website?
I don't think it's on. Unfortunately, it's under the dominion of the our friends
Jewish
at
film
the
people.
the foundation at Brandeis, but they've done a beautiful job restoring it. I don't think I've seen that scene though on like YouTube or anything like that.
Right.
Actually,
Okay.
you have to get a copy.
Maybe they'd let
I'll put a link to it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they'd let you have that little clip anyway to put on the website.
Right.
If nothing else.
They'd lease it for
Maybe.
about, the price of like a Manhattan, 3-bedroom apartment. No, I mean they might.
Okay,
I mean, they might.
we are still recording. I'm going to actually turn off the recording. Except I'm just worried that Paul Gifford's going to say something that I'm going to say. Darn, I should have kept the recording on.
No, I'd have to. No, but thinking about movies, there's the Julius Klein scene in it. It's supposedly it must represent or it's you know what I'm talking about. It's I don't remember the name of the movie, but he was in lots of movies. But it's in the Lower East Side, and it's a Hungarian restaurant, and it takes place at the turn of the century, and I don't remember but that's atmosphere because there was a important restaurant there at Little Hungary, which is it's not Moskowitz, but it was definitely a Jewish hangout, important politically and all that.
What was the film Orchard Street, if I'm not mistaken? Is there not a scene where they're all gathered downstairs in a Romanian wine cellar?
On Orchard Street, interesting.
My computer is telling me there's a scene in a wine cellar. Okay.
You should check that out.
Going back to the American old time cymbal players, nationality,